Ah, finally, a movie that we can all enjoy together. Actually, no. Not everybody is going to love Together. Like, if you don't like horror movies, this is not it. But Together was written and directed by the debuting Michael Shanks, and it stars real-life married couple Dave Franco and Alison Brie. And they're playing a young couple who move to the countryside and find themselves encountering a mysterious force that horrifically causes changes in their bodies. As you can expect in shocking body horror like this, it of course causes changes in their bodies. Now, this was actually a huge hit at Sundance earlier this year. Neon probably has a huge hit on their hands. I was hearing rumblings from my friends who did go to Sundance that whoever picks this movie up has a glorified masterclass on their hands. And Neon scooped up the theatrical rights to this, and I went and saw it today. And I left the theater mostly stunned, which in my opinion is what all good body horror should do. This one, I mean, you want a movie that gets under your skin. Literally, Together will do that. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the queasy. If you don't like horrible, disgusting images, don't go see this movie. Because this movie is sick, it's twisted, it's disturbing. And even though there are supernatural elements in here, Together feels like a film that can happen in real life, which in my opinion is what all the scariest horror movies should do. I feel like if you were to put this in the conversation with some of the better horror movies we've gotten over the past decade, with great filmmakers like Jordan Peele and Ari Aster, Michael Shanks, I feel like, can lump himself right into that with this feature. His direction was stunning. The cinematography, the shot composition, how things are edited together. There is a very haunting sequence involving a shower in this that left me on the floor. And that's just based on the filmmaking merits alone. The story of this movie is very interesting, and it's not even necessarily because of the horrific elements, which are gruesome, but the real life ramifications in this movie and in this story, I wanted to learn so much more about this couple. It was such an interesting dynamic between these two, because you have Dave Franco's character, who feels like he's at very much a crossroads in his life. He feels very much like he's stuck in one place, with dreams that seem to be insurmountable, like he can't achieve them at all. And meanwhile, his girlfriend, played by Alison Brie, is very much set in her ways. And the reason why they moved to this countryside house is because of a new teaching job that she's gotten. It feels like this is a couple that has some very relatable situations going on for a lot of different people, I'm assuming. Some people, I'm sure, will look at these two and they'll be like, oh my god, that's us. And that can scare the living out of them. And I will also mention Dave Franco and Alison Brie. I don't think I've ever seen these two act better than they were in this. And I think also the fact that these two are married in real life helps their chemistry. Because man, it was off the charts. And even though the gruesome horror elements that you get once you hit a halfway point in this, even though these images are fantastic, and they will stay ingrained in your mind for weeks after seeing this, even if you take the horror element out, if this movie was just about these two young people trying to find their way in life, I wouldn't mind that. Because there's enough interesting going on between these two that I'm like, man, if the movie was just them, you don't need the horror elements. This is just fine. Which I will also mention, Michael Shanks as a horror movie filmmaker is very promising. His ceiling is extremely high. I can't wait to see what he does next. Because what he does with jump scares, what he does with certain dream sequences, what he does with practical effects. The opening of this movie is very confusing, especially if you're watching it for the first time. But then when you think more about it, once you progress through the story, you're also thinking okay, that opening makes sense. And as a horror movie fanatic, seeing that imagery and just being taken back to John Carpenter's The Thing, which is still one of the greatest remakes of all time, that was very, very refreshing. And it's ironic that I'm saying refreshing because it's kind of an homage to what Carpenter did all those years ago. But I think that also just goes to show you how much love and appreciation Michael Shanks has for this genre. And there were also a couple of really good jump scares. And horror movies nowadays don't really get me a whole lot, especially with jump scares. The music composition, the sound editing, and the mixing, all that put together, the jump scares were perfect. Speaking of that word perfect, you guys might be hearing my review of this movie so far and think that there's no notes at all. But oddly enough, Together is not a perfect film by any stretch. I wouldn't even go as far as to say this is my favorite horror movie of the year. And I think a lot of it has to do with the third act. Now, the first hour and 20 minutes of this movie I feel like is horror movie filmmaking perfection. And as I've mentioned, even if you take out the horrific elements, Together is still a very interesting movie standing by itself. But I think when a certain character literally walks into an exposition dump, it's like, okay, it honestly feels like the script is spoon-feeding me a little bit. And I honestly kind of wish it didn't do that. And touching back on the realism of the relationship between Franco and Brie's characters, there's a lot of things that are played for humor in this, and the humor for the most part works. I have no complaints about a horror movie that can be funny from time to time. Look back at Get Out. I still think that's a horror movie masterpiece. And that movie is hilarious, a great sense of humor. Together, very similarly, carries a really good sense of humor. But then when you think about how this movie ends on a very disturbing note, the lasting image you get of this movie, it's kind of funny. And I don't know if that was the intention of the ending, but I just couldn't help but snicker at the final frame. Like, you're in a certain location. I'm not going to spoil anything, but as it pans through and I'm seeing what certain items are in this place now, I'm sitting here and I'm going, there's no way. There's no way they're doing this. And sure enough, yep, that's what we get. And I will also say, I despise the cliche of the villain reveal. I think that's a very overplayed cliche, especially as it goes with Disney movies, especially over the past 15, 20 years or so. This movie has one of those, and I'm not going to dig into like what that is or like how it plays into the main story, but I honestly kind of found the reveal a bit unnecessary, and considering who it is, it kind of rubs me the wrong way that they portrayed this person as a villainous character. Like, why do you need that? But I mean, listen, aside from these nitpicky complaints, Together is a really fantastic horror debut for Michael Shanks. I can't wait to see what this guy does next. I can't wait to see what's next for this studio. Which I will also say, there were 2 trailers that I was very keen on seeing when I went into this theater today. Keeper, directed by Osgood Perkins, and Shelby Oaks, directed by Chris Stuckman. Can we please have more trailers debut in the theater instead of online? Like, please, that's all I'm asking for. It feels very vintage when you go into a theater and you see a trailer for the first time and you don't see it on the internet. Kind of adds that little bit of extra flavor to the movie-going experience, seeing something new. I know Disney just did that with Avatar Fire and Ash playing in front of Fantastic Four. So please, keep that trend going. I love that. And keep the trend going of really good horror movies like Together, please. Because this was really good. I'm going to give Together an A-. Probably the best I've ever seen Dave Franco and Alison Brie both. And I highly recommend you see this on the biggest screen possible. Let me know what you thought of Together down in the comments section below. What are some of your favorite gruesome horror movies that you've ever seen? Which ones really got under your skin? I really want to know. As always, I love getting in front of this camera, talking all things movies with you guys. Hit that subscribe button if you're new and tap on that thumbs up as well. Thank you so much again for your continued support, my friends. Y'all are the best. And with all that being said, Back Talk, commence.